Thanks again to everyone for joining today. My name is Christina. I'm with the Contentstack team, and I will be your moderator for today's workshop session. So without further ado, today's session is how to create a global omnichannel experience. And we have three amazing folks here. Adrian Cohn from Smartling, he's head of marketing. Florian Faes, managing director at Slator, and Gal Oppenheimer, director of solutions architects at Contentstack. Without further ado, I will pass it over to Florian.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for taking the time to join us today. I'm really excited, and thanks for the kind introduction. So my name is Florian. I'm with Slator. So we're a research and analysis firm covering the global localization industry, and I'm based here in Zurich, Switzerland. So we can move on to the first slide. All right, so today we're really looking at how to reach consumers in their local language via e-commerce, right? That's one of the goals. So first, let's set the scene and just look at how fundamentally really COVID transformed the e-commerce landscape. Look at this chart here. So basically, the pandemic has been a massive accelerator and has moved everything online, the whole world online. And the US is, of course, not alone, but this chart is very illustrative of what happened. I mean, you basically compressed what's essentially 10 years of growth into a period of 8 weeks. And this presented a unique set of challenges and of course also opportunities for all of the businesses that moved online. And one of those challenges is, how do you reach customers in their own language? And for the US, of course, that means localizing mostly your content from English into, what have you, 2, 3, 5, up to 100 languages, as I'll be sharing in just a few minutes. So that is a huge challenge that companies like Contentstack and Smartling, of course, are helping to solve. Let's move to the next slide, please. So how big of a challenge is this? Well, it's what we calculated, Slater, it's a roughly $12 billion challenge. I mean, the total market for translation and localization services, we estimate, is around $24 billion. But as I'll just explain in a second, we also looked at this market from a buyer intention point of view in our most recent report, which is published in May 2021, so it's quite fresh. And you're looking at essentially three areas, three buyer intentions that are geared towards e-commerce, towards selling something, towards making something accessible, in a digital form. And one is accessing a market, then acquiring customers, and of course, retaining a customer. So let's just look at them briefly. So first, accessing a market. Well, something like localizing a website, localizing your app, a SaaS UI localization. In a nutshell, if your product isn't localized, isn't available, you can't, of course, sell it to a consumer. Let me give you an example. We recently had design startup Canva on our podcast, weekly podcast, and they told us that they're localizing their website, their product, not website is included, but basically the SaaS into no less than 132 languages and locales. Right. So that's a huge challenge and a huge undertaking, and it's a very core part of their going global strategy. And it seems to be working. Their revenues are up 130% in 2020. They're generating about $500 million in revenue now, and they're valued at $15 billion. And Canva is an Australian startup, so their natural core domestic market, of course, is quite small. So they need to use language to go global. Now, on the acquiring customer side, you got marketing content, social media, market research, just to mention very few. And also, if you're acquiring customers, it's hard to connect, of course, if you don't speak the language, just in a nutshell. And retaining customers, when you have user support, FAQs, help content, you'll avoid a lot of churn if you localize those elements of the customer experience as well, because if customers like your product, they're using it, but then if they have a question or if they try to figure something out or navigate your website, etc., and they can't do it because you're switching into another language, then that's tough to do. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Great. So e-commerce has been traditionally blazing the trail in localization, just because it's digital. It's by nature it's quite global by default. But as we saw, 2020 has really been a step change. I mean, you've seen millions and millions of new businesses brought online that are trying e-commerce for the first time. And what this means is, in terms of localization, it means increased competition, and then consumers also expect you to offer multilingual because so many of these new firms are offering it as well. And they're also using some of the latest technologies because they don't have any legacy systems. So the competition has been stepped up there quite a lot. Now, customers do expect really a seamless, localized buying journey. I mean, my native language is German, and I can't tell you how many times I was going through like a German buying process, and then all of a sudden I got kicked back into some English form, or something popped up. Papa was in English. Like, it's, to me, I speak English, it's okay, but I mean, there's probably 50 million Germans or Swiss that don't. So that would be quite off-putting and disruptive for the buying journey. For businesses attempting to really localize the entire journey, this booming adoption of SaaS means that your content may sit on numerous repositories. So you don't have just one single standard stack where you can localize, but maybe you're pulling in content from all kind of sources, all different sources that you're subscribing to, licensing, etc. So that's posing quite a strong challenge to localization. And then finally, I mentioned video here. It's a little bit of a random point, but video has really graduated now. And think about video localization is very, very hard. I mean, you got to figure out subtitling, voiceover, and if you're extremely ambitious, maybe even dubbing. So that's quite a challenge to get video out multilingual. All right, let's move to the next slide. So what you want to do is you want to be agile. You want to enable a way that you can do agile localization. So, the days are over, and in e-commerce, they may never have been there, where you have like a giant drop of content, you localize it into 5 or 10 languages, and then you send it back, and you have like a 2-week window to achieve all that. I mean, currently it's these platforms, they're upgrading in real time. Content needs to be localized in real time. And that always means, or tends to mean, very, very small content batches. What do I mean by that? Think like 50 words, 70 words, 150 words, or maybe even less in 10, 15, or 20 languages, right? For this, you need a very automated system to work. And as we said before, content really resides across multiple repositories. And so your CMS and your localization tech needs to be able to connect to all that. And actually, when I was researching for this presentation, I came across that the Contentstack and Smartling each offer over 30 APIs and connectors. And I'm pretty sure that if we ask them to develop something custom, they could pull this off as well. Let's see. Pretty sure they could. So that's what you want to start out with, right? You don't want to start out with something that offers very little or is very hard to connect to these third-party systems. And then there are things like integrating, for example, machine translation. Machine translation is not a fit for everything. Of course, if it's creative content or highly sensitive content or legal content, etc. But for certain areas, like maybe FAQs, maybe other things that are highly standardized or maybe are viewed by fewer people, it might be an option. So you want to make sure that you have this integrated as well. And then what I mean by real-time TM synchronization, sorry, that's a bit of a jargon word there. It's a translation memory. And you want to make sure that these translation memory databases where previously translated content, localized content resides are really exchanged in real time, and make sure that this ensures that terminology, for example, is consistent within a language, etc., and that linguists can really collaborate in real time. One last point here is that this also means that those minimum fees have really gone away, for example, in agile localization, because if you're doing little batches of 50, 100 words, etc., there's no way that somebody could just put a minimum fee on top. So in short, you really want to make sure that you work with these fast-moving agile systems that can connect to your entire stack. All right, that was a quick overview. Thanks so much for for listening so far. And I'm really looking forward to Adrian's presentation and then the demo in just a few minutes. Thanks.
Thank you, Florian. And for those of you who are really interested in learning more about the localization industry generally, I highly encourage you to go to slator.com because they're publishing great insights and generally just articles on a regular basis about what's happening in the business. So Florian, thanks for this insightful talk. And I think a lot of what I'm going to say is actually going to build on what you've put forth here, which is the macro trend that e-commerce in particular is growing significantly, and that's putting a bigger tax on content developers to produce the written word. And in turn, if you want to reach your audience on the global level, how do you reach them in native language? So let's dive into some of the ways that Smartling thinks about this. And Christina, we can hop over to the next slide. And for those of you who don't know, Smartling is a language translation company. Our mission is to translate the world's digital content. And we think this is really, really relevant because the way that we see things is that life is actually lived through words. And over the next few slides, which we can start clicking through, I just want to refresh your memory. We use our phones to book flights, and every single word on that app is integral to the purchasing experience. At home, we're working out on Pelotons, and the Peloton UX is created in English, but what other languages is that product available in? Not just to buy it, but to use it and engage with the community that they've created. There are scenarios like this everywhere we look, whether you're building and buying a car online, or we can hop to the next slide, Christina. Oops, looks like it's taking a second to load. There are so many cool innovations in the e-commerce space. One of my favorites is that Warby Parker on their app has developed this functionality where you can hold your phone up with the self camera view, and you can actually virtually try on all of the eyewear in their catalog. And that experience also, as you can see, powered by words, home try on, buy for $95, the name of the actual product that you're trying on. So what we're seeing here is that all of the businesses that we use, either B2B businesses or B2C businesses, their product experience is powered through words. We can click on to the next slide, please. And, I think, Florian, you mentioned video content. All of these streaming services companies are effectively the same. But the thing that separates Netflix from Disney Plus and Hulu and all of the other services that you may come across is the actual content. And that content is video content. Companies are also starting to use video content to train employees, train customers to create ads or short video that are used on social. Video is exploded in utilization. It actually makes up something like 80% of the world's website traffic. So, and as you can see, Disney Plus, they've done an incredible job building their audience because they've got an amazing content catalog and user experience. So when we talk about engaging the worldwide audience, the most startling data point, in my view, is that you need to be localizing your content into as many as 41 languages to reach 95% of the online GDP. And that's really exciting because with the advent of all of these technologies, it means you can reach more people. Your company's product or service could be utilized by more people around the world. But it introduces the challenge of how do you actually choose which people or which markets to target, said another way, what languages to localize into. And it introduces the challenge of scalability. How are you actually going to create in-language content across all of the different content types and all of the different devices? And we think we've got a pretty crafty solution. Next slide, Christina. So Smartling, as I mentioned, is a leading translation technology company. We have both translation services and software services. And we built an integration with Contentstack. And Gal will talk briefly about Contentstack and the integration in a few minutes, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about the importance of language translation. And on the next slide, Christina, what we see is that language translation and translation in general is a very human experience. And it's a human experience because we are the people, humans are consumers, and we want to be able to read content in our native language. And I think, as Florian mentioned, if you're going through an e-commerce checkout flow and all of the content is in your native language until a widget pops up and it's in a different language, it really introduces quite a lot of risk into that process. And so it's important to get translation right. Now, while translation is a human experience, the utilization of machine translation has increased absolutely exponentially. We can actually just jump to the next slide. Thanks. So from 2018 to 2020, our customers increased their utilization of machine translation by 600%. So it's a real part of the translation process now, but as Florian alluded to, there's a delicate balance between where you use machine translation and where you use human translation. And we make it possible for you to utilize both services. You can hop to the next. So one other component that we think is interesting and that I think Contentstack is uniquely positioned to enable their customers to do really effectively is supply content across every single touch point with the ability to update that content on a regular basis on a global level. Now, all of these different touch points, and there are more, do require language translation. And so that's where Smartling comes in. And Smartling, what Smartling does is it sits between the content management system of our customers, Christina, we can hop, thank you, and the end user. So what Contentstack is great for is producing your content for a variety of reasons. And then what Smartling does is it ingests all of that content, puts it through a AI-powered machine translation workflow and a human translation workflow, and then supplies that content to the end user, making it a very seamless turnkey experience. So Smartling becomes, on the next slide, Christina, the system of record for global content. So we actually can integrate not only with Contentstack, but many different platforms that you may be using to enable your global end user experience. And we centralize your content, not just your translations, but the entire process surrounding human and machine translation. And the first thing that we do on the next slide is we capture all of your brand preferences through the form of a global brand style guide, through a glossary, through workflow development, and through your translation memory. And all of these tools are uniquely important to the language translation process because every brand that we work with, and I'm going to go ahead and guess that your brand is really important to you. And the best way to ensure quality outcomes at scale is to ensure that these four elements of your translation program are in really good shape. And we've built a number of AI-powered toolkits to automatically collect these pieces of content. Just as an example, we can generate a glossary based on your content. And the glossary is a reflection of the brand terms and commonly utilized terms. And we make this all available to the language translator who works in the platform so that you can get the translations done correctly. So Gal, I'll hand it over to you to talk a little bit more about Contentstack.
Awesome, thank you. Nice, it's exciting to be here with everyone. So Contentstack, we've been working with brands all over the world for years, watching them sort of increase their digital transformation. We've seen, especially with the changes in COVID, how, and I think the whole world has seen it, how important it is to move to digital, move to web, and find a solution that allows you to pivot quickly. Like there were so many changes every week throughout the last year as brands were reacting to new rules, changes in what people wanted to do, changes in what people were comfortable with. And so where Contentstack comes in is we really give sort of the best collaboration for both business users and technology. Next slide. And what we also bring in is the ability for customers to bring in better data from Contentstack, from all of their other systems, bring it all under one place. Next slide. Awesome. And when all those things come together, it accelerates solutions around personalization, intelligence, translation, in this case, automation, and bringing the experience for sort of on the omnichannel. So you can connect into web, to mobile. We'll show you how to connect in for voice and bring all of this through with translation, with personalization, and really connecting to your customer in one place. And so what these experiences bring together when you basically, we sort of focus on three areas: is letting customers move faster. We call that sort of clearing the digital backlog. And so they're able to build in more stuff into their websites, into their mobile apps. Their engineers are not spending time building, sort of fixing bugs, fixing typos, fixing spelling mistakes. They're giving that control straight to business users, letting the experts of what they know be experts in their space. And finally, being able to just pivot quickly. Customers have moved entire new websites online in just a few months across multiple languages and locales. I think, Adrian, this one's for you, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think we can tag team this call. I think, you know, what I really appreciate about Contentstack is, and Smartling is working in partnership, is that I think we're both similarly aligned in terms of our business values and how we want to enable customers to develop content and deploy it. There are a lot of similarities in the way that we develop our products, and I think you'll see that when we get to the demo. There's just one more aspect of Smartling that I believe is important that we share with everybody as to build on the integration. It's that once you integrate Smartling and Contentstack and you start translating content with Smartling, you're going to get unparalleled access and visibility into the performance of the translation program. This means you'll be able to analyze the efficacy of individual translators to see if they're introducing mistakes or if they're introducing high quality output. You'll be able to track how much money you're saving through leveraging your translation memory, which is an active TM. It's automatically updated and automatically applied to your content. And there are a whole lot of other data points that you can analyze throughout the translation process that are easily accessed by our customers, which enables you to make better data-driven business decisions. So I think that's a pretty valuable part of the toolkit. So I think, Gal, it's time we should dive into the demo, show people what the integration does.
Let's do it. Awesome. Can you guys all see my screen?
Sure can.
Great. So this is a really cool sample site. It's all about food and wine, which are two of my favorite things. I'm going to show you a couple features that are really cool about Contentstack, and then how easy it is to have an integration between Contentstack and Smartling and initiate your translation. So this is an example of a web page. You can see lots of food recipes on here, some video tutorials and wines. Users or content creators can click on the edit button and jump straight into Contentstack. This is a really great way to connect both our website and the UI, regardless to where they're sitting, and build the pages. You can see here the pages we've seen here, sort of the banner, this test content, recipes, videos, and wines are all broken down into these small sections. The feature behind this is a feature called modular blocks, which allows customers basically to put together building blocks on the fly. So let's say I wanted to add a new block. I can go right in here and I can start filling in the content, and I have some pre-written content to make life a little bit faster for me on this demo that I'll drop into here for a cookie recipe. And it's actually a really good one. I tried it over winter break a couple months ago. The fun part of building a food recipe site is you get to try all the recipes when you're killing time at home during COVID. So you can go in here. Let's look for some cookies in our library and add this one in here. And add in finally an awesome description. Let's make this like a list so it's a little bit design behind it. So this is sort of the experience content creators can come into. They can control things like layouts, such as what the alignment is of the page, if the image should be left aligned, right aligned, if they want to put any animations, so we can put like a fading effect on it. And then when I'm ready to place it, I can also, if I want to, just reorder it very easily. So I can just right here, drag and drop, place it anywhere that I want in the image. So I can drop in here, save my changes. Behind the scenes, Contentstack will automatically save, and you can see up here, the page already refreshed itself. And so now when I come in, you can see this cookie recipe sitting right here above the video. So really, really easy to build these very flexible design pages, and lots of more things in here. What I want to show you is a little bit about the recipes, and that's what we'll be jumping into. So let's look at one of my favorite recipes here is the best and easiest cardamom maple salmon. I want to show you sort of how we'll translate this, but I also want to show you how you can easily look at content here inside of a web page on a mobile app. So let's go look at what this integration looks like. So I have this recipe in here. This is the one I was just looking at over here. And so I want to pull it up in Smartling. So I can go right over here. Let's open up Smartling. So you can see right in here, we have the Contentstack tab that's pulling all of the items from Contentstack. You can see some of the recipes that I've already started translating or have finished translating. So I can select the one here that I'm looking at. You can see it hasn't been translated before, so I can go in and I can request a translation. What's really good about Smartling, just like Contentstack, is they're built for these really complicated and really advanced enterprise use cases. And so in a large company, I may be a content creator sort of translating this content, but I may not be the one that holds the budget, or I may not be the one to approve it. And so I can put in a request and have someone else approve it for me. So we'll request the salmon recipe translation and say, let's say I want to translate it into French as well as into German. I can save the job. Behind the scenes, it'll basically put the request into the system, process the request. It's going to actually automatically calculate sort of what the content size is, how many words I have, what the expected time is, and if there's a budget behind it, what the expected cost is. So we can see there's 275 words. It looks like it'll be about 144 weighted words. Those are the words that come in, and it's not giving me a cost estimation. Smartling's super awesome and gives us a great account for demoing. And then I can look at sort of what the workflow is. So I think Adrian was talking before about how you can do machine automated translation as well as manual translations. I can pick from different approved workflows. In this case, I'm just going to go for the default, which I believe is machine translation, just to save some time. And I'm going to jump over hats and pretend I'm the approver and approve this request coming in here. So now I can go look at the job directly in the system. So you can see right here is the translation. Let's click into it. And I can see how the translation sort of automatically started in the background with some pre-translated words in French, has not been started in German. So we'll go in here and look at the translation tool. They have a really awesome tool that allows me to look at the translation and review it as it's going live. So you can see it automatically translated some of these content. These are things that had been translated before, so it already knows how to translate 1 teaspoon, 2 pounds. You can see the translation up here for the salmons. This looks good. I do not speak French, but I will pretend that I do and that I'm approving it. So I can save this translation. And then I can submit it and submit this translation in. And so I'll go back over to my dashboard. This takes a second to process in the background. So right now what it's doing is it's processing the translation in the system. I can take a look over here and see sort of where it's progressed. So you can see the translation's been completed. Let me go take a look and see if it's gone back into Contentstack from Smartling. And let me navigate to it. So I need to look at my the recipes right over here. And I can see this one is overall in progress because it was looking at both French and German. But if I take a look, it looks like the French is still working. So let's give it another second to look. Let's give it another moment. Usually when we come back in, it's already completed. There it is, completed. So really fast to go back in here. Actually, it looks like it's still working. Test it one more time. There it is. Now it's completed. Perfect. Right over here, completed. So now if I go back into Contentstack, where was it? Over here. If I switch over to French, I can see right over here my translation came in, as well as the content here is translated. And if I want to preview the page, I can hover right over here and take a look at this item right over here. and I can see my page is live with the newly translated content. So really quick and easy integration to bring the content from Contentstack that I was creating into Smartling, do sort of all of the magic and all the things Smartling is amazing at in Smartling. And then when it's ready, it comes back into Contentstack, and I can have it auto-publish. This is a preview site like I had. And if I wanted to say schedule it out to go live, I can go here in the publish. I can push it to production either now or schedule it out to go live in the future. So I want to do very simply in the application. Cool. And that's just a little bit about sort of how Contentstack works and how easy it is to build our integration between Smartling and Contentstack.
Gal, I just wanted to add maybe one or two things there.
Yeah, definitely.
We showed like a very thorough round trip of content, and many of the steps that we just shared with you are steps that you can either fully automate. For example, the creation of a translation job and the authorization of that translation job can be 100% hands-free. So as content comes in from Contentstack, Smartling automatically recognizes it and puts it through the right translation workflow. And when it's done, it goes back to Contentstack, and no work is needed from a content manager, a translation manager, a developer, nothing. Can be 100% automated. And the second part of the demo that Gal showed was the actual translator experience. And I think it's really important that we showed that, because it's a very comprehensive tool for the language translator to go in and write the translations, in particular, because there's visual context and the ability to actually see how the translations will appear on the website or landing page that you're developing. But that process is managed by our language translators. So you don't actually need to think about where to find translators. You don't have to have translators in-house. You can outsource all of that to Smartling, and we take care of it. So all you really have to do is push and pull content from Smartling. That's it. Could be super automated process.
Awesome. And it looks like we actually had an audience question come through from Paige. Gal, how does it work with left to right languages? And this might be a question for Stephen as well. How does it work with right to left languages in terms of display and adjustments needed on the website?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So taking a step back, what's really cool about Contentstack is we are a headless CMS. And what that means is that the presentation layer, so what you're seeing here is actually completely separated from the way the content is structured in the CMS. So you're seeing here text laid out with like, this is orange font, specific font size, specific font color. When I'm looking at the same page in the CMS, I can come right over here. You can see it's just broken down by fields. I don't have any specifications here around what the size is, what the color is. I can add in controls if I want for like H1, H2, but I'm not selecting what the font is, what the size is. So if I work with the right to left language, the content would come out in Unicode characters over the API. It's actually called a JSON file. I can actually show you sort of a little bit under the hood what that looks like. This is going to go in a little bit into the developer side of things, but I can look at the recipes coming in here. And let's look at all the items. So look at the, where is it? The instructions right over here. And so this is giving me the instructions. This is actually what's coming out of Contentstack. Are these content pieces here? And then how you display it and what the experience should be for the content creator, whether it's here on this web page, whether it's like a mobile view, this mobile optimized, all of that comes from the template. So when building right to left support in your application layer is where you'd support the switching, just like I have in here. Let's say I was switching to Arabic or Hebrew. I would basically flip the site and have the page load right to left. And we have quite a few customers that are running Contentstack in a lot of languages. Like Lego, one of our customers, I believe they support like 72 or 73 languages on the platform, many Unicode languages. And we have other customers that sort of deployed all around the world in well over 100 countries.
Yeah, and just from the Smartling side, we also have this built right into our platform. So we know the languages that are right to left, and we easily can send the content back and forth in the correct format for the locale.
Perfect. I think we had a couple other questions. This one is directed more for the Smartling team. How do we go about translating video content?
Well, video, I actually, Florian had a perfect introduction to video content in his portion of the presentation, because video introduces a number of complexities, primarily because you're starting with a media type that isn't words. You're starting with a media type that is video and audio. And so there are a number of things you can do. The most basic form of video localization is to create transcriptions, which would be subtitles for the content, and then transcription, or translating the subtitles into different languages. That's something that you can manage in Smartling. You can upload both the video file and an SRT file, which is the transcription file. We could also create that for our customers. And then we translate it in a different version of our translation interface that actually allows the linguist to watch the video and type the transcription, and then play back like short segments of the video until they've completed it. And the benefit to that is that we actually code the transcription file with a timestamp, so that when we send it back to you and you upload it, everything is automatically in the right place. You don't have to go back and do any video editing. It's super easy. You can upload it to Vimeo, YouTube, wherever, and it's turnkey. We've done it for a few videos ourselves, and it's awesome. But the other layer to video that Florian mentioned, and maybe Florian, you have some insight on this, is is doing audio dubbing. You want to talk about that process and what the industry looks like there? Because Smartling doesn't do audio dubbing.
Yeah, it's a very different industry, and it's evolving super fast. So it went from, I mean, basically you're talking about studios. I mean, it's a very kind of art. It's almost an art. Like, so, voice actors would be, I mean, they're considered themselves actors. So you'd have to bring in, those voice actors that go into a professional dubbing studio. And you can imagine there was quite some operational issues during COVID because people couldn't go into the dubbing studio. And so there were some cloud solutions that were applied, but they didn't really, it was hard. It was hard. So, but that's only for kind of the blockbuster entertainment, the big Netflix shows. I mean, there's all kinds of solutions now, also cloud-based, that you can use to do more, that maybe YouTube or Vimeo, or like corporate content, right? And there's a fair amount of not having to have actors going to a studio solution to say that. And then that's just the voice, the lip sync dubbing. Then there's voiceover, which is a little less challenging.
Totally. Thank you, Florian.
Yeah, thank you guys. Dimitri asked a question: how do you prevent English editing while localization is in progress? Is the source content locked to prevent changes?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's a couple ways to do this, and this is really the power of Contentstack, is it's highly configurable. So you can go into settings, and you can set up different roles with different permission sets, and you can set also workflows with permissions. So when setting up roles, let me go over to the roles section. I can create a new role and show you guys a little bit. You can give access to specific entries, content types. You can make exceptions to it in assets. You can actually lock down permissions all the way down to the field level. And then in workflows, right over here, let me jump over to workflows. When you create workflows, in addition to creating, actually right over here, in addition to creating access to workflows, when setting them up, you can set up on each stage. And let me jump in here and edit this. You can set the access rules. So who has access to content each stage, who can make changes to move to stage, as well as who can make changes to content each stage. So if you wanted to lock down edits so that once content was sent to translation, no one can make changes, you can basically say when you move it to the translation stage, it's locked down to all users, or maybe to all users except for admins. And 100% of our platform is also backed by an API, so you can fully automate this, where once the content comes back, the permissions change again, whatever way you want to. And so instead of us forcing you to go down one path of permissions, we give you the flexibility to set up in whatever way you want to.
Awesome. And Dimitri had a follow-up question. If automation is turned on, which event kicks in the translation flow? How can we prevent waste, having content automatically sent to translation each time a content creator removes a comma in English?
That's a really good question. So there's two parts to it. You can set translation to automatically occur, for example, when content is saved, or you could set it to occur based on a workflow stage, or we have a feature which I hadn't gone into, but let me jump over to it quickly. I'm gonna click this edit button to get back to where I was before. I can look at my piece over here. So in addition to publishing content directly, which I covered, I could choose to add it to a release. And so I could put in and say, hey, like when I've made a major change, I'm gonna add it to a release. And I could call this release my, let's say French translation. And I can add it to the release. Let me just pick this one over here. And then what I can do is in Smartling, I can go in Contentstack, and instead of looking based on entries, I can look based on releases. And so I can find things in specific releases that I want to pull from. And then all the content sitting in that release is what I would look for. So there's a couple different ways to set it up. And so part of the power of Contentstack, and this is actually where our customer success team comes in, is every customer goes through onboarding our platform. And it's less about learning how to use the platform because it's very easy to use and most developers learn it in less than a day, but more around these best practices of, hey, like this is how we want to manage our translation process, or this is how we want to manage our personalization process. What's the best way to set it up in Contentstack? So we'll work with you to define that and actually teach you how to enable it yourself.
Yeah, and Dimitri, I would add on to that, because you made the comment that what would happen if you change a single character. Your example was a comma, but I'm going to go a little bit further and say, let's say you had a typo and you wanted to adjust the translation. The benefit of the Contentstack Smartling integration and the way that the Smartling platform works is that we're actually going to recognize the string that you submit and identify that one character change or two characters changed or however many it is. You're going to easily leverage the translation memory to automatically reuse translations that you've already paid for. And we're going to make just a small adjustment cost for the one or two characters. And it's like a fraction of, a translated word cost. So you actually have the ability to just send in the whole page again if you wanted to. Let's say you sent in 1,000 words and 3 characters changed. You're going to be paying a very, very small fee to have those 3 characters change. And it's not going to require you to really think about it much. It's turnkey, fully automated, and really, really easy to do.
Awesome. I think we had one final audience question here, but definitely folks who are on the line, please submit your questions into the Q&A box or even in the chat. Wherever you want to submit them, we'll answer them. Gal, what are the advantages or disadvantages of translating from a headless CMS as opposed to a traditional CMS?
Yeah, really good question. So the biggest power, and this is what I was sort of talking about when I went into the structured item, is that all of your content is broken down basically by field. So you're still giving an amazing experience to people coming to your website. Look at how beautiful this site is. And what's awesome is we actually built this entire page in about 2 hours. So really fast and easy to build. But behind the scenes, it's all sitting very structured like this, which means it's very easy to pull out specific parts of your text, specific parts of your content. Even if you have, like here on the homepage, where you have text and content overlaid on top of the images, it's actually broken down into separate fields, which means it's very fast and simple to integrate with a translation engine like Smartling, and very simple to keep managing and also reuse the content in other locations. And sort of the atomic aspect behind the content is what the power is.
Fantastic.
This website's making me hungry.
It is. They're all really good recipes. So this is a public website. So if anyone wants to go and steal some great recipes, I highly recommend it. We have some pretty cool features where you can actually even look for recipes based on cook time or complexity, or like what kind of wine it pairs with. So a lot of fun. There's a lot more stuff in here we didn't get to today.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps up our session. Adrian, Florian, before we close out, is there any last words that we want to share with our audience?
Well, from my end, thank you to everyone who joined today. I thought this was a super productive session. I'm really grateful for Florian joining us as well, because he's just such an expert in the industry, and it's super great to have someone of his caliber with us today. So thank you, Florian. And for those of you who wish to learn more about how Smartling and Contentstack work with one another, you can jump to either of our websites, which are now displayed on the slide, and we'd be happy to walk you through the nuances of both platforms and how they work together, and make sure that we're a great fit for your custom solution. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Actually, we had one final question come in, and we have a bit of time, so we'll answer this. What would be the typical users of Contentstack in business? Devs, copywriters, and localization managers? Anyone else?
Yeah, so developers are definitely building out the systems. There's sort of the certain ones and the first ones in there. We do sometimes see enterprise architects coming in to help building the information architecture, menu structure, content modeling, that kind of stuff. But the day-to-day users can be content editors, anywhere from copywriters or sort of web devs, all the way to just SEO specialists and anyone in there. What's nice about the tool is it's really, really simple to use. Our editor training is about 20 to 30 minutes. And half that time is just making sure that they know how to get their username and password or set up SSO. And then it's sort of, you can set up incremental permissions to give people sort of more functionality as they become experts in the tool.
Perfect. Thanks, Gul. And again, like Adrian said, if you want to learn more, definitely visit us at smartling.com/contentstack or contentstack.com/smartling. We are all over social media, both of our accounts, or all three of our accounts. So definitely follow us there. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Great. Awesome. Thanks guys.
Bye.
Take care.